Admiral Park stood alone on the observation deck of Frontier Station Omega. The stars stretched out before him like scattered diamonds on black cloth. He was 58 years old, and he had spent 40 of those years serving in the United Terran Defense Fleet. His hair had turned gray, his face had grown lined, but his eyes remained sharp and clear. For 80 years, there had been peace. 80 years since the last Great War. 80 years since humanity had shown the galaxy what happened when someone threatened their home. Park placed his hands behind his back and watched a patrol ship drift past the station. The ship was small, fast, and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. That was the human way. Build small, build fast, build deadly. Behind him, the door opened with a soft hiss. "Admiral," said Captain, stepping onto the deck, "you wanted to see the evening report." Park turned to look at her. Was in her early 40s, with short black hair and a scar running down her left cheek. She had earned that scar fighting pirates near the outer colonies 10 years ago. She was the commander of the destroyer Indomitable, and she was one of the finest officers Park had ever known. "Anything unusual?" he asked. "Nothing, sir. All sectors quiet. The warning beacons are functioning normally. No unauthorized approaches." Park nodded slowly. The warning beacons were humanity's first line of defense. Thousands of automated stations positioned at the edge of human space, broadcasting in over 4,000 languages. The message was simple: you are approaching human territory. Identify yourself and state your intentions. Unauthorized entry will be met with force. Most species understood the warning. Most species had heard the stories. Most species knew better than to test humanity's patience. "Good," Park said. "Let us hope it stays that way." But even as he spoke the words, he felt something cold in his chest. A feeling he had learned to trust over 40 years of service. Something was coming. 3 days later, Lieutenant Bay proved him right. Was young, only 26, but he was the best communications officer in the entire 7th Fleet. He had a gift for finding patterns in noise, for hearing whispers in silence. And on that morning, he heard something that made his blood run cold. He was sitting at his station aboard the Indomitable when the signal appeared. It was faint at first, just a flicker of energy at the edge of his sensors. But as he adjusted his equipment, the flicker became a wave, and the wave became a flood. "Captain," he called out, his voice cracking. "Captain, you need to see this." Was at his side in seconds. She looked at his screen and felt her stomach drop. "That cannot be right," she whispered. "I have checked it 3 times, Captain. The readings are accurate." On the screen, a massive energy signature was approaching Sector 77. It was moving fast, and it was big. Bigger than anything had ever seen. "How many ships?" asked. Swallowed hard. "Over 300, Captain, maybe more." Stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she turned and walked to the communications panel. "Get me Admiral Park, now." Within the hour, the entire 7th Fleet was on high alert. Admiral Park stood in the command center of Frontier Station Omega, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching force. His face was calm, but inside, his mind was racing. "What do we know about them?" he asked. A young analyst stepped forward. "They call themselves the Dominion, Admiral. They are a conquest species. Our records show they have invaded and subjugated over 40 different civilizations in the past 500 years. They believe they are the supreme race in the galaxy. They take what they want and destroy what they cannot use." Park studied the display. The ships were huge, some of them over 5 kilometers long. They bristled with weapons and moved in perfect formation. This was not a raiding party. This was an invasion fleet. "Have they responded to our warning beacons?" he asked. "Yes, sir," the analyst said, her voice tight. "They sent a single message." She pressed a button, and a deep, growling voice filled the command center. "We do not recognize the territorial claims of prey species. Your worlds belong to the now. Surrender, and some of you may be allowed to serve. Resist, and you will be erased. The room fell silent. Park could feel the fear radiating from his officers. 300 enemy ships against his fleet of 200. Ships that were larger, heavier, and came from a species that had never known defeat. But Park felt no fear. He felt only a cold, quiet certainty. "Send them a reply," he said calmly. "Sir," the communications officer asked. "Send them this message. You are entering human space. This is your final warning. Turn back now or face consequences you cannot imagine. We will not ask again." The message was sent. For several hours there was silence. The fleet continued to approach. They did not slow down. They did not change course. Then, as the fleet crossed the invisible line that marked the border of human space, a response came. "Prey does not warn predators," the commander said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Prey runs or dies. You have chosen to die." Admiral Park listened to the message. Then he closed his eyes. Captain watched him from across the room. She had known Park for 15 years. She had never seen him show fear, but she had also never seen him look the way he looked now. His face was not angry. It was not worried. It was simply empty, as if he had already accepted what was about to happen and had moved past all emotion. When he opened his eyes again, they were cold. "They have made their choice," he said quietly. "Now they will learn why no one trespasses human space." He walked to the main console and placed his hand on the activation panel. All around him, officers held their breath. "Admiral," said softly, "are you sure?" Park looked at her. For a moment something human flickered in his eyes. Sadness, perhaps, regret, but it passed quickly. "I have spent my whole life praying I would never have to do this," he said. "But they were warned. They all were warned." He pressed the panel. Across human space, on 1,000 ships and stations, alarms began to sound. Sleep cycles were interrupted. Families said quick goodbyes. Soldiers checked their weapons and kissed photos of their loved ones. The machine of human war, dormant for 80 years, woke up. Admiral Park spoke one word into the fleet-wide channel, one word that would echo through history, one word that would become a legend. "Activate." And somewhere in the darkness between stars, they had no idea what they had just awakened. Overlord stood on the bridge of the eternal conquest and smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. His teeth were sharp and black, and his eyes glowed with the hunger of a born predator. He was 9 feet tall, covered in thick gray scales, and he had led the Dominion to victory in 17 different wars. He had never lost. He did not intend to start now. "Report," he growled. His tactician, a smaller name, stepped forward. Was old for their kind, with faded scales and cautious eyes. He had served for 30 years, and he had learned that the Overlord did not like bad news. "We have crossed into human territory, Overlord. No resistance so far. Their warning beacons have gone silent." Laughed. It was a harsh barking sound that made the bridge crew flinch. "Of course they have. The prey finally understands its place." He turned to look at which showed the stars of human space stretching out before them. "Tell me again about these humans." Pulled up a data file. "They are a young species, Overlord. They have only been spacefaring for about 800 years. They are soft-bodied, physically weak, and have short. Our intelligence suggests they are fractured politically and spend much of their time arguing among themselves." "Easy prey," said with satisfaction. "Yes, Overlord," hesitated, "however." His eyes narrowed. "However what?" Chose his words carefully. "There are some unusual aspects to their defensive posture. The border zones we have passed through are almost entirely empty of civilian presence. Only military installations and automated platforms. It is strange." "What is strange about it?" "They are cowards. They have fled before our approach." "Perhaps, Overlord, but the installations themselves are odd. They appear undermanned, almost as if—" He stopped himself. As if what? Demanded. Lowered his head. Nothing, Overlord, I am sure it is nothing. But deep in his old bones felt something he had not felt in decades. He felt doubt. The fleet continued forward. Within hours, they detected their first significant target, a human station floating alone in the darkness. It was small, barely a kilometer across, with a handful of weapon platforms visible on its hull. Pathetic, sneered. One station to guard this entire sector. Humans truly are as foolish as the report said. He opened a channel to the station. Human station, this is Overlord of the Dominion. You will surrender immediately and provide us with all information about your defensive positions. If you comply, your deaths will be quick. For a moment there was only silence. Then a human voice responded. It was a woman's voice, calm and steady, speaking in accented galactic common. This is Sergeant Han, commander of Border Station 14. You are in violation of human territorial sovereignty. You have ignored our warnings. This is your final chance. Turn back now. Blinked, then he laughed again, louder than before. You threaten me. One tiny station against 300 warships. Human, you are either very brave or very stupid. We are neither, replied. We are simply giving you one last chance. We do not want to do this. Do what? Asked amused. There was a pause. When spoke again, her voice was different, softer, almost sad. Kill you all. Cut the channel and turn to his weapons officer. Destroy that station. Show these humans what happens to those who insult The weapons officer nodded and gave the order. 12 warships moved into formation and opened fire. Bright beams of energy lanced toward the tiny station. The station exploded. But it was not the explosion expected. Instead of simply breaking apart, the station seemed to fold in on itself for a single heartbeat. Then it released a wave of pure white light that expanded outward at incredible speed. The 12 warships that had fired never had time to react. The wave hit them and they simply ceased to exist. No debris, no escape pods, nothing. They were there and then they were gone. The bridge of the Eternal Conquest fell silent. Stared at where 12 of his finest ships had been, there was now only empty space. What? He whispered. What was that? Was already checking his instruments, his old hands trembling. Matter-antimatter detonation, Overlord. The station was rigged to explode. The entire structure was one massive bomb. But the crew, there were humans on that station. Looked at his readings again. Then he looked up with fear in his eyes. The crew evacuated, Overlord. Transport signatures detected 7 minutes before the detonation. There were escape pods hidden behind the station. They were already gone when we opened fire. Felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt uncertainty. They knew, he said slowly. They knew we would attack. They planned for this. Overlord, a sensor officer called out, his voice high with panic. New contacts, multiple FTL signatures emerging. The flickered and updated. All around the fleet, space was tearing open. Ships were appearing from nowhere, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Human ships, hundreds of them. They were smaller than warships, sleek and angular, but they moved with a speed and precision that made blood run cold. They did not drift or adjust their positions. They arrived in exact formation, weapons already powered, shields already raised. 200 ships, the sensor officer reported. No, wait, 212. They are surrounding us, Overlord. Stared at the display. His fleet still outnumbered the humans, but the 12 ships he had just lost were a blow. And the way the humans had appeared, the speed and coordination of it. These were not panicked defenders. These were hunters who had been waiting. A communication signal appeared on the main screen. Hesitated for a moment, then accepted it. A human woman appeared on the display. She was small compared to with short black hair and a scar running down her cheek. She wore a gray uniform with symbols did not recognize, and her eyes were completely calm. "I am captain of the UTDF destroyer Indomitable," she said. "You were warned. You ignored our warnings. You destroyed our station." She paused. "You have made a terrible mistake." "You think your tiny fleet can stop us?" snarled, trying to recover his confidence. "We outnumber you." "Yes," agreed, "you do for now." She leaned forward slightly, and when she spoke again, her voice was cold enough to freeze stars. "Let me explain something to you, Overlord. The station you destroyed. It was a trap. The border zones you found empty. We evacuated them because we knew you were coming. We have been watching you since you entered our sensor range 3 days ago. We know your fleet composition, your weapon types, your shield frequencies. We know everything." Felt the doubt growing in his chest. "You do not understand what you have done," continued. "You have invaded human space. You have killed human soldiers. And now you will learn why in 800 years of spacefaring no one has ever successfully conquered humanity. Not once. Not ever." She straightened up. "You were warned," she said again. "Remember that. In the hours to come, when your ships are burning and your crews are dying, remember that you were warned." The channel closed. Stood frozen on his bridge. Around him, his officers were silent, waiting for orders. The human ships hung in space, not attacking yet, simply waiting. Moved to stand beside his overlord. "Sir," he said quietly, "perhaps we should consider." "No," growled. We do not retreat from prey." But even as he gave the order to attack, could not shake the feeling that he had just made the worst decision of his life. And somewhere across the void on the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain watched the fleet begin to move. She felt no joy, no excitement, only a grim, tired determination. "All ships," she said calmly, "weapons free, show them what happens when you trespass human space." The battle began. Pilot officer gripped his flight controls as his fighter screamed through the chaos. He was 23 years old, and this was his first real battle. Around him, beams of energy sliced through the void. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Debris tumbled past his cockpit like deadly rain. He had trained for this for 4 years. He had run simulations 1,000 times, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. "Eagle Squadron, form up on me," his squadron leader shouted through the comm. "We have our target, the command ship cluster at coordinates 773. Do not stop for anything. Do not hesitate. You know the doctrine." Knew the doctrine. Every human soldier knew the doctrine. It had been drilled into them from their first day of training. The doctrine was simple. When humanity goes to war, humanity does not fight to disable. Humanity does not fight to negotiate. Humanity fights to annihilate. Total destruction. Complete elimination. Leave nothing behind that could ever threaten human space again. It was brutal. It was absolute. And it was the reason no species had successfully invaded humanity in 8 centuries. Pulled his fighter into formation with the rest of Eagle Squadron. There were 12 of them, small and fast, weaving between the larger destroyers and cruisers that were engaging the fleet. Their target was a cluster of command ships near the rear of the enemy formation. "Remember," the squadron leader said, "suicide drones go first. We follow through the gap. Hit the command ships and get out. Do not try to be heroes. Dead pilots do not win wars." Ahead of them, a wave of automated drones raced toward the ships. The drones were expendable, loaded with explosives, designed to punch holes in enemy defenses. The ships opened fire, destroying dozens of drones, but there were too many. Some got through. Explosions bloomed against the shields of the command ships. Now the squadron leader shouted, "Go, go, go!" Pushed his throttle forward and dove into the gap. Meanwhile, aboard the destroyer Indomitable, Captain stood on her bridge and watched the battle unfold. Her ship was in the thick of the fighting, trading fire with 3 cruisers at once. The deck shook beneath her feet as enemy weapons struck their shields. Shield status, she called out. 62% and holding, her tactical officer reported. Hull integrity stable. Nodded, target the lead cruiser's engine section. Full power to forward weapons. The Indomitable fired. Bright beams of energy lanced across the void and struck the cruiser. The enemy ship shuddered, smoke and fire erupting from its rear section. Direct hit, enemy engines disabled. Finish it, ordered, then move to the next target. Across the battlefield, the pattern repeated. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, focusing their fire on one enemy at a time, destroying them completely before moving to the next. They were larger and more numerous, but they fought as individuals. Each ship tried to protect itself. Each captain made their own decisions. The humans fought as one. Deep in the engineering section of the Indomitable, Chief Engineer worked frantically to keep the ship alive. She was 45 years old, with graying hair tied back in a practical knot and grease stains on her uniform. She had been an engineer for 20 years, and she had never seen damage like this. Hull breach on Deck 7, one of her crew shouted. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but we are losing atmosphere. Seal it off and reroute life support, ordered. What is the status of the reactor? Running at 115%. We cannot maintain this output for much longer. We maintain it until the battle is over, said firmly. That is our job, keep the ship fighting, nothing else matters. Another impact shook the ship. Sparks flew from a nearby console, grabbed a fire extinguisher and put out the flames herself. Come on, old girl, she muttered to the ship. Do not give up on me now. Above them, on the bridge, received word that the Indomitable had lost 40% of its hull integrity. She acknowledged the report and kept fighting. That was the human way. You fought until you could not fight anymore, and then you fought some more. Back in space, Pilot had reached the command ships. His squadron had lost 4 fighters on the approach, but 8 remained. They dove toward the largest command ship, weapons blazing. Targeted the ship's communication array. If they could knock out the command ship's ability to coordinate the fleet, they would fall into even greater chaos. He fired. His shots hit true, and the communication array exploded in a shower of sparks and debris. Good hit, Eagle 7, his squadron leader called. Now get out of there. But as tried to pull away, a fighter appeared on his tail. Warning alarms screamed in his cockpit. He twisted and turned, trying to shake his pursuer, but that was good. I have one on me, he shouted. Cannot shake him. Hold on, 7, I am coming. Saw his squadron leader's fighter dive toward him. There was a flash of weapons fire. The fighter exploded. You owe me a drink when this is over, his squadron leader said. I will buy you a whole bar, replied, his voice shaky with relief. They raced back toward the human lines as the command ship behind them began to drift, its communications dead. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Overlord watched his fleet being torn apart. He had lost 80 ships in the first 2 hours, then 100, then 150. This is impossible, he whispered. We outnumber them, how are they winning? Tactician stood beside him, his old face grim. They are not fighting the way we expected, Overlord. They do not try to capture our ships. They do not try to force surrender. They simply destroy everything. Why? What do they gain from such destruction? Thought about it for a long moment. Then he answered slowly. Fear, Overlord. They want us to fear them. They want every species in the galaxy to know what happens when you attack humanity. They are not just winning this battle. They are sending a message. Stared at a battleship exploded under concentrated human fire. Escape pods launched from its hull, but human ships ignored them. They were not interested in prisoners. They were only interested in destruction. Order the fleet to retreat, said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. We need to regroup. The order went out. The surviving ships began to turn, their engines flaring as they tried to escape. But the humans did not let them go. Admiral Park stood on the command deck of Frontier Station Omega, watching the battle through holographic displays. He saw the fleet trying to retreat. He saw the desperation in their movements. "Sir," his communications officer said, "the enemy is withdrawing. Should we let them go?" Park was silent for a long moment. He thought about the warning he had given. He thought about the station that had destroyed. He thought about the 50 human soldiers who had stayed aboard that station until the last possible moment, making sure the trap would work. "No," he said finally, "no one leaves." He opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Park. The enemy is attempting to retreat. Do not allow it. Pursue and destroy. I want no survivors. They need to understand. The galaxy needs to understand. No one trespasses human space." The human fleet surged forward. By the end of the 6th hour, they had lost 180 ships. Human losses were 23. The survivors of the fleet fled into the darkness, broken and terrified. Behind them, the wreckage of their invasion force tumbled through the void. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain finally allowed herself to sit down. Her ship was battered and bleeding, but it was still alive. She was still alive. "Pursuit course laid in," her navigation officer reported, awaiting orders. Looked at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there they were running back to their own space, running home. But they would not find safety there. "Follow them," she said quietly. "This is not over, this is just the beginning." The lesson had begun, but they had not finished learning. Governor stood at the window of his office and watched the human ships in orbit above Prime. There were over 400 of them now, floating in perfect formation like a ring of steel around his world. They had been there for 6 days. They had not attacked. They had not demanded surrender. They had simply waited. And that waiting was the most terrifying thing had ever experienced. Prime was a border world, home to 12 million civilians. When the survivors of the invasion fleet had come limping back, bringing tales of human fury and destruction, had expected the humans to follow eventually. He had expected them to attack, to bomb, to destroy. But they had done none of those things. Instead, they had established a blockade. No ships could enter or leave. No supplies could get through. No communications could reach the outside galaxy. Prime was cut off, isolated, trapped. And still the humans waited. "Governor," his aide said nervously, "the human ambassador has arrived." Turned from the window. His scales had lost their color over the past week, fatting from healthy gray to a sickly pale. He had not slept well. He had not eaten well. He had spent every day wondering when the end would come. "Send her in," he said. The door opened and a human woman walked into his office. She was small, even by human standards, with silver hair tied back neatly and calm brown eyes. She wore simple civilian clothes rather than a military uniform. She carried no weapons. She was completely alone. Her name was Ambassador O, and she moved through the room as if she owned it. "Governor," she said pleasantly, "thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Studied her carefully. Humans were so strange, so small, so soft. How had they destroyed the greatest invasion fleet the Dominion had ever assembled? "You came alone," he said. "That is either very brave or very foolish." Smiled. It was a polite smile, the kind one might give a child who had said something amusing. "Is it?" she asked. "I suppose it might seem that way from your perspective." She walked to the window and looked up at the human ships in orbit. "Do you know how many weapons are currently aimed at this building, Governor? 47 capital ships have locked their main batteries on this location. If anything were to happen to me, this entire city block would be reduced to glass within 3 seconds." She turned back to face him, still smiling. "So no, Governor, I am not brave and I am not foolish. I simply understand the situation better than you do." Felt his heart's beating faster. He had dealt with human diplomats before. They had always been cautious, eager to avoid conflict, willing to make compromises. This woman was different. This woman was terrifying. "What do you want?" he asked. Walked to a chair and sat down without asking permission. She crossed her legs and folded her hands in her lap. "I want to explain your situation," she said, "and then I want to give you a choice." "What situation? We are surrounded. We are trapped. Our fleet is destroyed. What more is there to explain?" "Quite a lot, actually." His voice remained calm and pleasant. "You see, Governor, your overlord made a terrible mistake. He believed that because humans are physically weaker than we would be easy prey. He was wrong." She paused to let the words sink in. "Humans learned a very important lesson long ago, back when we lived on only one world. We learned that the only way to guarantee peace is to make war so costly that no one would dare start one. We call it deterrence. It has served us well for a very long time." "We were not trying to start a war," protested weakly. "We were simply—" "Invading our territory," cut him off. "Ignoring our warnings, destroying our installations, killing our people." Her smile never wavered, but something cold entered her eyes. "That is war, Governor. And when someone makes war on humanity, we respond with overwhelming force. Always, without exception." Slumped in his chair, "What do you want from us?" "Three things," held up one finger. "First, unconditional surrender of all surviving military forces that participated in the invasion. They will be tried for their crimes against humanity." "Tried, you mean executed?" "That will depend on the trials." She held up a second finger. "Second, war reparations. Your Dominion will pay for the damage you caused. The exact amount will be determined by our accountants, but I assure you it will be significant." Scales grew even paler. "We cannot afford." "Third," continued, ignoring his protest, "permanent recognition of human territorial sovereignty. Your Dominion will acknowledge our borders and agree never to violate them again. This agreement will be broadcast to every species in the galaxy." She lowered her hand. "These are our terms, they are not negotiable." "And if we refuse?" Tilted her head slightly. "Then we will destroy every military installation in space. We will blockade every world until your economy collapses. We will hunt down every ship, every soldier, every weapon your Dominion possesses. And when we are finished, we will return here, to this very room, and we will present the same terms to whoever is sitting in your chair." Her smile was gone now. Her face was calm and empty, like the surface of a frozen lake. "We do not want to do this, Governor. Humanity does not enjoy destruction. We would much rather live in peace with our neighbors. But your overlord made his choice, and now you must live with the consequences." Before could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the building. His aide rushed in, panic in his eyes. "Governor, Overlord is attacking. He has gathered the remnants of his fleet and is moving against the human flagship." Felt his heart stop. "What? I gave no authorization for an attack." Stood up slowly. Her expression had not changed, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. "It seems your overlord has not learned his lesson yet," she said quietly. She touched a communication device on her wrist. "Captain, what is your status?" The response came immediately, crackling through the small speaker. "The flagship and 23 support ships are on approach. They are attempting a direct assault on Admiral Park's position." "Stop them," said simply. "Yes, Ambassador, with pleasure." In space, Captain stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the ships approaching. The enemy formation was desperate, sloppy. They were attacking without coordination, driven by wounded pride rather than tactical sense. It was almost sad. "All weapons target the flagship," she ordered. "Concentrate fire on their command center. I want." The human fleet moved. In minutes the formation was torn apart, ships exploded, escape pods scattered. The flagship Eternal Conquest took hit after hit, its shields failing, its hull cracking. watched the enemy ship die. She thought about all the species had conquered, all the civilizations he had destroyed, all the lives he had ended. She felt no joy, only a grim satisfaction that justice at last was being served. Target eliminated, her tactical officer reported. Overlord is dead. Nodded slowly. Signal the remaining ships. Tell them their overlord is gone. If they surrender now, they will be treated fairly. If they continue fighting, they will join him. One by one, the surviving ships powered down their weapons and raised surrender flags. Back on Prime, Governor had watched the entire battle through his window display. He had seen the flagship explode. He had seen the pride of the Dominion reduced to scattered debris in a matter of minutes. He turned to Ambassador O, who had watched the battle with the same calm expression she had worn throughout their entire conversation. "It is over," he whispered. "Yes," agreed, "it is." She extended her hand. It was a human gesture, new, a symbol of agreement. "Do we have a deal, Governor?" Looked at her hand. He thought about his people. He thought about the future. He thought about what would happen if he refused. Slowly, with trembling claws, he reached out and took her hand. "We have a deal," he said. Smiled. This time the smile was almost warm. "Humanity hopes this will be the beginning of a peaceful relationship," she said. "We can be generous allies. We can offer trade, technology, medicine, cultural exchange. The people do not have to be our enemies." She released his hand and walked toward the door. "But let me be absolutely clear, Governor." She stopped and looked back at him one final time. "There will not be a second warning." Then she was gone, leaving alone with the shattered remains of his Dominion's pride. Above the planet, the human ships remained in their perfect formation, watching, waiting. A reminder. A promise. A warning to anyone else who might forget. The galaxy had changed. Where there had once been fear and isolation, there was now trade and cooperation. Dozens of species moved freely between star systems, exchanging goods and ideas. Wars still happened, but they were smaller now, contained. The great powers maintained their borders through diplomacy rather than destruction. At the heart of this new order was Accord Station, a massive structure floating in neutral space. It was a place where all species could meet as equals, a place where conflicts could be resolved with words instead of weapons. Today, the Great Council Chamber was filled with delegates from across the known galaxy. They had gathered to witness the admission of a new species to the galactic community. A young race who had only achieved faster-than-light travel 20 years ago. Among the delegates was a young scholar named. He was small and covered in soft blue fur, with large, curious eyes that seemed to drink in everything around him. This was his first time leaving his home world, and everything amazed him. But nothing amazed him more than the humans. He watched them move through the station, tall and confident. Other species treated them with a respect that bordered on reverence. When humans spoke, everyone listened. When humans offered advice, everyone considered it carefully. Did not understand. Humans were not the largest species. They were not the strongest. They did not have the longest or the most advanced technology. Yet somehow they commanded more respect than anyone else. He had to know why. After the council session ended, approached an elderly human who sat alone near a large window overlooking the stars. The human was old, with white hair and deep wrinkles, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He wore simple gray clothes with no symbols or decorations. "Excuse me," said nervously, "may I speak with you?" The old human looked at him with kind eyes. "Of course, please sit down." Sat on a cushion beside him. "My name is, I am a scholar from Prime. We are new to the galactic community." "I know," the human said. "Welcome, my name is Bay. I am a delegate for humanity." Recognized the name. Bay was famous even among the. He had been a hero in some great war long ago, though did not know the details. Elder Bay said carefully, "May I ask you a question?" "You may ask me anything." Hesitated. The question felt rude somehow, but he had to know. Why is everyone so afraid of humans? Bay was quiet for a long moment. He looked out the window at the stars and saw something pass across his face. A memory, perhaps, a shadow of old pain. "They are not afraid," said finally. "Not exactly. They are cautious, and they are cautious because they remember." "Remember what?" Turned to face the young. "Do you know the story of the war?" Shook his head. "I know the Dominion exists. They are traitors now mostly. Quiet, they keep to themselves." "They were not always quiet," said. 50 years ago, they were the most feared conquerors in the galaxy. They had destroyed 40 civilizations. They believed they were invincible. And one day, they decided to invade human space." Leaned forward, fascinated. "What happened?" Smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "I was young then, a communications officer aboard a ship called the Indomitable. I was there when they crossed our border. I was there when we warned them to turn back. I was there when they laughed at our warnings." He paused, lost in the memory. "And I was there when we destroyed them." Felt a chill run down his spine. Destroyed them, but they still exist. "Their species exists, yes. Their empire does not." His voice was matter-of-fact, almost clinical. "They came with over 300 warships, the largest invasion force anyone had ever seen. They expected an easy victory. They found something else entirely." "What did they find?" Looked at him with those clear, sharp eyes. "They found out what humans are willing to do to protect their home. They learned that we do not fight to negotiate. We do not fight to show strength. When humanity goes to war, we fight to win. Completely. Absolutely. We destroy our enemies so thoroughly that no one else will ever dare threaten us again." Swallowed hard. "That sounds cruel." "Does it?" Shrugged. "Perhaps. But consider this. In 50 years since the war, no one has attacked humanity. Not once. Not ever. Our space is the safest in the galaxy. Our people live in peace. Our children grow up without fear." He gestured at the council chamber behind them. "And look at the now. After we defeated them, we did not enslave them. We did not occupy their worlds. We helped them rebuild. We offered them trade. We shared our medicine and technology. Today, they are a peaceful species. Their people are healthier and happier than they were under their old warlords." Thought about this. It was strange. The humans had shown terrible violence, but they had also shown kindness. They had broken and then they had helped them heal. "We are not cruel," continued. "We are not warlike. We do not enjoy killing. But we learned something long ago, on our own world during our own dark history. We learned that the only way to ensure lasting peace is to make war so costly that no one would ever dare start one." "Deterrence," said, remembering a word he had read. "Exactly," nodded approvingly. "We would rather be friends with everyone we meet. We welcome all who come in peace. We share freely. We help those in need. But if someone comes with violence in their hearts," he trailed off. "What happens then?" Did not answer directly. Instead, he pointed toward the chamber doors. Turned and watched as the human delegation entered the council chamber. There were 12 of them, men and women of various ages, dressed in simple clothes. They looked ordinary, average, unremarkable. But as they walked in, every other delegation stood up. Every species in the room rose to their feet in a gesture of respect. Watched with wide eyes. He understood now. It was not just fear, it was not just respect. It was something deeper, something the humans had earned through blood and fire and mercy. The humans had proven that they could destroy anyone who threatened them. And then they had proven that they would rather build than destroy. That was power, true power. The kind that came not from weapons or fleets, but from knowing exactly what you were capable of and choosing, whenever possible, to be kind instead. Stood up slowly, his old bones creaking. "The council session is about to begin," he said. Will you be attending? Nodded, still processing everything he had learned. Placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. The galaxy is a big place, young scholar. There is room for everyone, as long as everyone respects each other's space. That is what the humans believe. That is what we have always believed. He smiled, and this time it was a warm smile, full of genuine kindness. You will do well here, I can tell. Welcome to the galactic community. He walked away, moving to join his fellow delegates. Remained by the window for a moment longer. He looked out at the stars and thought about everything had told him, about the war, about deterrence, about the strange balance between violence and mercy that defined humanity. Far in the distance, beyond the station, a human patrol ship drifted past. It was small and fast, bristling with weapons, a symbol of everything the humans represented. And somewhere at the edge of human space, the warning beacons still broadcast their eternal message. You are approaching human territory. All peaceful visitors are welcome. All others you have been warned. Smiled to himself. He understood now. He understood why no one trespassed human space. And he understood, perhaps for the first time, why that was a good thing for everyone in the galaxy. The council session began. They were officially welcomed into the galactic community. And in the crowd, an old man named Bay watched the ceremony and remembered all the friends he had lost, all the battles he had fought, all the sacrifices that had brought them to this moment. It had been worth it. It was all worth it. Peace at last for everyone. But the weapons remained ready, the fleets remained vigilant, and the warning beacons continued their endless song. Just in case. Always just in case.